Hello everybody, this is Tim here again to another movie review. Got tongue-tied. Movie review. This time for 28 years later. Now this film has actually been out for a little bit now, not for a whole lot, but it's been out for at least a few days. And it's getting very divisive reactions from people, seemingly. Critics seem to really like it. I think it has like an 80 something on like the tomato meter, which and I believe the audience reaction though, or score, I believe is like more like 65, maybe going down. It'll probably end up around like 64, maybe something like that. I don't know, maybe 63. I don't think it'll go lower than 60 though. But it seems to be a divisive film. I will say the trailer is better than the film. If you've seen the trailer with like the boots, theme playing in the background, or whatever, that I believe is actually from a poem about soldiers who just have to like keep marching on or whatever. The trailer is better than the movie and does make it seem like it's going to be much more epic than it actually is. This is really much more of a somber, dramatic movie, really, more about drama. But I did enjoy it. I did not love this movie. Some people are loving it and calling it like a masterpiece. I wouldn't go with that. This is not a masterpiece, but it is good. It's just not a great movie, and I can see some people who are extremely hyped up by that trailer. Like if this is like your favorite horror franchise, and you're just extremely hyped up by the trailer, and you go in like, shit, I can't wait to see this masterpiece, and then after it's over, you probably will be like, it's just all right, But I don't think it's bad. But for me, I thought it was good. But I can see, yeah, if it's like your favorite franchise ever or something horror-wise, that maybe you will walk out somewhat disappointed. But for me, watching it as a movie and a part of the series, I thought it was good. I give it a 3 out of 4. This is a good movie. It's just not a great movie. It's definitely not a masterpiece, but it is good. The acting in it is good. The boy who plays the kid in the movie, Spike, he's probably the best performance in the movie, but he also gets the most to do. He does a great job. And Aaron Taylor Johnson does a good job as the father of Spike, but he's really not in the movie much. He's pretty much just in like the first act, and then he completely disappears until the last like 2 minutes of the movie when he shows up, basically just to kind of hint that he's gonna go search for his son or whatever in the second part of this trilogy, which is going to be a trilogy. This is the first movie of 3 in a 28 years later trilogy. The next one's called The Bone Temple, which I believe comes out next year in January. The movie's set like 28 years or whatever after the original film, so it's kind of in the future. And then the infection has been like pretty much wiped out, except for like in the UK where it's been like kind of quarantined, and there really doesn't even seem to be that many infected still left even in the UK. We see some, but it definitely doesn't feel like big herds and big packs or whatever like it was in like the 28 days later to me, where it felt like there was more. And even in like especially 28 weeks later, where there did seem to be a lot more. Here it just seems like there's like only like not too many around, maybe a few like little bundles of them or whatever out in the woods or something. Um, but people in the UK or whatever have like they live in like these little fortified fortresses or whatever that are kind of like across these little pathways that eventually get like covered after so long by the water, so it makes it pretty much hard for the infected to get over there. And even if they do get to the building or whatever, the fortified building that they're in, they really can't get in because it's just way too fortified. It's just there's no way they can break through. But so the infected are really not a threat, as big of a threat in this, I mean, as they were in the other two. You really don't feel that. And I do think that weakens the movie a little, because the infected are they just kind of feel like they're there. Like, unless you're like an alpha infected, who are like these really big dudes who are infected, they kind of got like 8 packs of abs or whatever, and they got like super strength because their testosterone or whatever is like running through them, and they can just like pull your friggin' head out with your spine attached to it. Unless you're like one of them, the other ones are seemingly pretty easy to get away from or kill, or at least from what we see in the movie. But yeah, and they got this ritual where they want to take like the kids out after they become like a certain age or whatever, to teach them like how to deal with the infected and everything. And you get to come back at a certain time, because if you don't, they're not going to go out looking for you. Which, yeah, I get it. That's kind of funny. But so Aaron Taylor Johnson takes his kid out into war to introduce him to the infected and all that, and they manage to kill some. There's like these big fat obese ones or whatever who just kind of crawl on the ground and eat worms and all that. And then there's the alphas that I mentioned. Then you got kind of like the standard ones who are like the running ones or whatever, that the alphas kind of like command. Some of them like chase after Aaron Taylor Johnson and his kid, the Spike character. And I believe Aaron Taylor Johnson's character name is Jamie. They managed to evade them pretty well, and they take out some with some arrows. You get some decent to good like action scenes here, and they go like hide in the roof or whatever of this building, which is it's kind of a neat action scene. Um, I do like how like strong the alphas are. Like later on, they're being chased by one like back to the fortress where they're trying to get back there, and they shoot him like multiple times, like 3 or 4 times with arrows, and it doesn't take him down because he's running on such like pure adrenaline because the virus is just like keeping him at a constant high, you know. So like the people in the fortress have to like shoot him with a flaming arrow, and that it explodes, and that's what finally like takes him down. I'm not sure if the alpha survives that, and it's the same alpha we see later through the rest of the film, or if that's a different alpha. I'm not for sure, but still, it was a cool little scene. And they get back or whatever, and Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, he's like bragging about his son. He's kind of like hyping him up and everything, and his son like is feeling like he's lying or whatever, but really he's just like trying to hype his son up to be bigger than he is or whatever, you know, which I get. But the kid, you know, he doesn't really understand, so that's when he first starts like thinking like, should I trust my dad, you know, or whatever. And then the big thing is that his mom is sick in the movie, and she's having like these big fits. And then the kid finds out that Aaron Taylor Johnson, his father, is cheating on the mother because you know he's going through a lot of shit with the wife or whatever because she's like pushing him away and stuff because of how bad her sickness is, and he just can't really deal with it. So it kind of drives him to cheating in a way because of the situation that he's in, which it's not really an excuse to cheat, but at the same time, if you saw the movie from his point of view, you would kind of understand why he's doing some of the things he's doing or falling into doing some of the wrong things that he does, like cheating on his wife. It's just because of the situation being so bad. But of course, when his son sees him cheating, that's when he like, you know, because the son loves his mother, he's like, yo, fuck you, dad. And I will say it goes too far here. There's a scene where the kid like pulls a knife out on Aaron Taylor Johnson, and he's like, get the fuck away from us or whatever. And that was too much. It just way too quick to the kid like threatening to like stab his dad. Even though Aaron Taylor Johnson does just like grab the knife out of his hand and then close it back, and he like hands it back to him, and he like punches the wall when he's angry and walks off. That was too much. Like the kid threatening to like stab his dad, who he's never really had any problems with that we know of until now. That seemed too fast. That was too much. And the kid being like obsessed with his mom and everything, and loving her a lot. Yeah, it makes sense, but it would have drove it home more. I think if we would have gotten maybe some flashbacks with him like spending time with her before she was sick, and to show like how strong their bond was, maybe or something. But no, we just expected to just like buy into it that he's just like, you know, really loves his mom like unconditionally, which makes sense with him being a kid, but at the same time, some of the stuff he does would be easier to swallow if we saw more of like their bond or whatever before she was sick. But he learns about this doctor or whatever who Aaron Taylor Johnson thinks is crazy, so he doesn't want to really risk like going out to try to find him and all that because he thinks it would be a fruitless endeavor to take his wife out or whatever. And also he probably knows what his wife's sickness actually is, that she is dying and that there's really nothing they can do. So that's why he doesn't want to go see the doctor or whatever that's supposedly out in the woods. But the kid, he doesn't understand, so he just automatically assumes that his dad just must not give a shit about his mom. But really, he does. He just doesn't want to take her out because he knows it would be pointless because it's the way she's sick. He probably knows that she has cancer. There's just nothing they can do for her. So the kid decides to like take her out there or whatever to go into the woods where all the infected are to try to find this doctor, played by like Ralph Fiennes, I believe, who's the actor who played Voldemort in Harry Potter. He was also in Red Dragon with Edward Norton and Anthony Hopkins. He's been in a lot of shit, but he's great here. He's like this crazy doctor out in the middle of the woods. He's like living amongst the infected, and he like covers his body in like iodine or whatever, which like repels the infected because the virus doesn't like it for some reason. And that's like another thing. Like you would think if somebody they discovered like the virus doesn't like that, maybe you could use that as like some type of, I don't know, some way to maybe beat the virus or something. Because the virus is repelled by that, you know, there's got to be some kind of reason. Maybe there's something in that kind of chemical or something that they could use or something, like the government could use or something or try. But basically, you get the idea that the government just wants to like leave this place here and just wait for the infection to burn out, which that is kind of a flaw in the movie because there really doesn't seem to be that many infected here. So I get that the government wouldn't want to like risk spreading the virus or whatever, but wouldn't they just like ride in a tank or something? Like the infected are not going to be able to like jump on a tank and take it out. I'm sorry, they're not. So wouldn't they just like ride in a tank or something, just like run most of them over or something out in the middle of the woods, or just blast them all to shit, or just like firebomb all the woods and wipe out like 90% of them, and then just the last little bit just go in and shoot them all or whatever? Or maybe just like lure them all out into like one location somehow with some kind of device or something, making noise, like get the majority of them to come out and then just bomb them. It doesn't really seem like the government couldn't just take these guys out, to be honest. And why are they just leaving like the non-infected people here still in the UK? Why don't they just evacuate them all and just take them all out of there? There's really no reason not to. Yeah, I get maybe risk not spreading the virus, but they could easily just fly in and land in these little small like community things because they're all blocked off from the infected. They can just like do some kind of test or whatever and find out they're not infected and take all the ones who ain't infected out of there and just save everybody, and then just bomb the fuck out of the UK and just eradicate the virus. Like, it really doesn't make sense why they don't just eradicate the virus, but there would be no movie, so fuck it. Another thing is that they do kind of just like gloss over the ending of like 28 weeks later when we see the infection has kind of spread to Paris. Like, they just kind of do it to where it's like we just get the idea that they kind of state that they managed to fight off the infected and wipe them out there, and so the only place there's any infection left is like here in the UK again. So the people in Paris, or the military in Paris, just kicked the infected's ass basically and just wiped them out, and they just can't do that in the UK for some reason. But yeah, so they just kind of wiped that out of there. Which I guess the idea of that is that Danny Boyle didn't want to like make a movie where the virus is like more worldwide spread, because it would be a totally different movie than what this is. It would be more of like an epic or whatever. Which what he's really trying to make here is like a self-contained drama story that just kind of has the infected in the background, and that's kind of a little bit of a problem with the movie, because by the end it feels like this could have just kind of been its own horror movie, horror drama even, that didn't even have to be connected to this series. Not totally, for the story it's going for. But at the same time, even though I think the film kind of lags a little in the middle with like Spike taking his mother out into the woods and everything, and it does kind of start to lag a little. But at the same time, I do think the acting is so good between the woman playing the mom and the kid that's playing Spike that I think it keeps me interested in the film from like a human drama level. And so the doctor, played by Ralph Fiennes or whatever, he's like, can't do shit for her. She's dying of cancer. She's gonna die. So this is when the movie like introduces kind of the theme that it's going for, which is about like having to deal with death or whatever, and the young Spike having to come to terms with the fact that his mom's gonna die. He has to face death, and there's nothing that he can do about it to help her. So she decides that she wants to be euthanized basically and just put down, because she's gonna die anyway, and there's nothing in this community that they can do to save her at all, and they can't get her off the island because the government won't allow it. So she's fucked. So she just decides to let the doctor euthanize her in more of a simple, like, put down kind of quick way, instead of like her having to be in constant pain to the point where she does die horribly eventually. It does suck for Aaron Taylor Johnson, who, even though he cheated, he obviously cares about his wife. So it still kind of sucks that he couldn't be there with his wife when she was put down. He'd probably want to be. But at the same time, she gets put down, and then he the kid Spike takes her skull and puts it atop this mountain or whatever that the doctor has made with all these other skulls. There is like this Swedish soldier who shows up named Eric, who like saves him or whatever in one scene, and his character just kind of gets thrown in the movie. We do get some like fun gore scenes with his team get taken out by like this Alpha or whatever, who Ralph Fiennes or whatever nicknamed Samson, because he just gives the infected random names because he's been out there so long with them, and he sees them more as just like people, regular people who are just sick, which is supposed to be kind of one of the reasons he doesn't just put them down, because that's how he looks at them. So he doesn't really want to kill them. Another thing I've heard, before I get to this, I was going to say that, yeah, the Eric character, who's like the soldier dude, he is really fun, and he shows up, we get some really entertaining moments with him and some fun moments, but he gets wiped out after that by the Alpha infected, after they find like this pregnant infected one or whatever who has a baby, and we get the idea it's the baby of the Alpha, and then he kind of gets killed or whatever because he shot the female pregnant infected, and he threatens to shoot the baby, so he gets killed by the Alpha. He gets his head torn off, which is it was a cool scene, but it happened a little too fast. I wouldn't have minded if his character stuck around a little more, because he was a likable character. He brought some fun to the movie, even though he was kind of just thrown in towards like the second half. He didn't really even need to be in the movie, truly, but when he did show up, he was fun and entertaining. But the actor had likable charisma. So when he got took out, I did kind of feel it like he could have stuck around a little longer. But yeah, so the Alpha like wants his baby back or whatever, and he's like chasing after Spike and his mom through some portions of the movie before she's eventually euthanized by the doctor. Which, yeah, they're trying to say that the infected, like the Alphas or whatever, are getting some of their humanity back. And later on, we get a scene where the infected are chasing after Spike's character while he's cooking some fish. And one of them, instead of running after him, stops to get the fish to eat it. So we can tell they're getting a little smarter. They've been around for so long. Some of their human traits or qualities are starting to come back into them, because they're basically like animals. It's kind of what the virus does, regresses you back to kind of like your primordial form or whatever. You're more just like an animalistic type person, and your rage is just like at 100-fold because you're just like an animal. But they've been around for so long that some of their human traits are starting to evolve back in. So some of the smarter ones who are becoming more human, they don't really bother with chasing Spike at certain points. They just like want to steal his fish, which I feel like this is probably building up to something where the infected become like much more human by the third film, which is supposed to end this trilogy, and we might get a scene where one of them actually like spares a human or something, or maybe even spares Spike's character or even his father, which Aaron Taylor Johnson, I believe, is supposed to be back for the second one. Maybe we get something like that, probably something similar to like maybe like Bub from Day of the Dead or whatever, which I would be okay with that. And the baby, of course, is born from infected parents, and Spike manages to take it back to his village or whatever and leave it there. And he names it after his mom. Um, and the baby is not infected because we're supposed to believe like the placenta or whatever, the inside of a woman's womb, I guess, and all that protects the baby from being infected. And of course, the baby feels like something also set up for like the third movie to like maybe it'll be like the cure possibly for the virus, which they already kind of had something like that set up in like 28 Weeks Later, where we got the idea of these kids with like different color eyes or whatever. They were kind of carriers of the virus, but they couldn't be turned by the virus. But at the same time, you could possibly develop a cure from them. And that's one of the things I hope with this trilogy, that by the end it kind of brings all the surviving characters back from the other two movies and these movies that we're getting now, and just kind of like, makes it feel like a full story. That would be cool. To bring everybody back, because I don't want to see like 28 Weeks Later just kind of swept away, because it is a pretty good sequel. It is more action based, but it's a fun movie. It's just not as good as 28 Days Later, but it is better than this one in terms of entertainment value. The story is probably more overall more dramatic and more impactful emotionally in this one, because it is more simple and more focused on the human emotion than Weeks. But Weeks is just much more entertaining than this one. But yeah, overall, you get to the ending of the film where this blonde gang shows up, which I know is supposed to be based off like this dude named like Jimmy Seville or whatever, who was like this guy who's a children's entertainer. They found out was a child molester, and so these people right here who is actually, one of them is a kid that we were introduced to at the beginning of the movie, whose dad was a priest who got infected, and I guess we're to assume he lived, and apparently probably found a bunch of other orphan kids and got them to join his gang, and they became like this cult or whatever, probably based off the Jimmy Seville guy who they saw as a kid and all that. And they're kind of like stunted, mentally, because they've had to survive or whatever so long in this infected world. But at the same time, they've gotten really good at it because they've had to survive in this infected world. And they jump down and start doing kung fu and just like beating the infected's ass. And they save the Spike character after like beating the infected's ass. It is, but they start playing like this heavy metal punk music, which feels like really out of place, and it does get silly. But at the same time, I did smile a bit and had a little bit of fun with this sequence because it was so over the top and how much they were just like kicking the infected's ass. And then that's where the movie just kind of ends. And the dude that plays like the Jimmy guy, who's like the leader of the group, is the same dude that was in the movie Sinners as the Irish vampire. He's a good actor. All in all, this was a good film. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I did like it. It's the weakest of the three films we've gotten so far. But it's still a good movie. This is still a good trilogy of films so far. I do think the sequel to this, Bone Temple, will probably be more fun than this one. It'll probably be less focused on like the drama story of like dealing with death and all that, and it'll probably be more about like this evil gang or whatever of these blonde dudes, and how they're worse than the infected, because they can probably handle the infected easily, so that makes them more dangerous because they are more competent than the infected, and because they're also psychotic. So yeah, well, in the sequel they'll probably deal with like this Jimmy guy being like a father figure to Spike or whatever, and Aaron Taylor Johnson like looking for him, and him eventually like deciding to side with Aaron Taylor Johnson and not with this crazy ass gang of blonde dudes. And Cillian Murphy's supposed to come back in the second one, so that's pretty cool. They didn't play in the House and the Heartbeat in this like they did the first two, but I'm going to assume they're probably saving that song for like a big action sequence with Cillian Murphy's character, probably where he like fights the Jimmy gang or some shit, and not out of the second or the third one. But yeah, overall this was a good movie. I liked it, didn't love it, but I'd give it a 3 out of 4 as a good film. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again.